We have the beautiful Lorien on the podcast today, and I'm so excited to talk about a topic that has deeply impacted me this year, which is the concept of radical self-care. And we were just having an incredible talk before we hit record, which we probably should have hit record for. So we're about to have it again, round two, but you're about to hear it for the first time. So thank you so much for being here, beautiful.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you, gorgeous. This is like really my honor and my pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. So I would love for you to share your story of how you found this work because you were just telling me before we hit record and it was so beautiful. So I'd love for you to share the journey that led you to embrace this as the foundation of your work.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So interestingly, I had this moment. I started out my career in entertainment, and one probably wouldn't naturally think I'd make a jump from that to spiritual work and, and personal development. But it started out with me really getting my hands and my heart around um, entrepreneurialism, and it really ignited my entrepreneurial spirit. And even though I sidestepped out of that, it lit something in me, and I recognized that I really had a passion for working with and for women.
Mm,
That was really my zone, and I went on to work with artists on promoting tours and things like that. But what I became most passionate about, I found, was working with female authors and
mm,
really working with them to get their books that they created, these beautiful works of art that they were so passionate about, and making sure that they were getting seen and getting the right amount of visibility. And that became such a significant passion of mine. And during that time, I continued to dance. I had danced, my whole life since I was a kid. And yoga was always sort of on board. I always say as like the movement cousin to dance, right? It was
yeah.
really necessary. But in 2016, I discovered Buddha yoga and created by a friend of mine, Busy Goal, to this day, deep love for her, one of my best friends. But that practice absolutely 100% broke me open on so many levels, and really began my healing journey. And while
Mm,
I never thought that I would want to be like a yoga instructor, like I always thought I was the student, right?
yeah.
Um, always saw myself as a student. I still do. Um, but that practice helped me discover parts of myself and understand elements of myself that needed to be healed. And then I realized every woman should have this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I became a master trainer. I had the opportunity to travel all over, including with Busy a lot of times, training large groups of women and helping lead them, right? Not only through this physical path of healing, but because of the nature of that practice, which works through the chakra system, it also allowed us to really delve heavily into personal development and
Mm,
personal healing and all of that. And so that really laid the foundation for the work that I do now, which everything I do is focused around empowering women to prioritize their well being through radical self care. Full
mm.
stop.
Love that. And I'm going to need a booty yoga to come to Australia. That's what I know for sure.
I
But
think there's somebody there that teaches. I just have to
oh,
find it
really?
for you.
Oh my
Yeah, yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
yes, I need to know about this because it sounds amazing. But
It's
our journeys
phenomenal.
are actually very similar in the sense of, having that discovery that led us on that journey for self-development that then led to it being a business journey because that was how I got into this path as well, was really having that experience where I had that awareness that I needed to work on myself. And then starting
Mhm.
to work on myself, I realized that I loved the work and wanted to help other people with it as well. But also, we both started in a sort of semi entertainment background. I was in event management. So it was, a very big jump. Most people get very confused when I tell them that I went from event management to fashion to personal development. It's quite a detour, but I think that that is often how people find their path is kind of, by accident when we just bump into the things that light us up and that we feel that pull towards and we realize that, like you said, it's our zone and we want to actually contribute in that way as well.
I think so. And I think the other thing that's really important to notice is it's self discovery,
Mm,
right? There's an element of fearlessness, right? That is required to say, I'm going down this path, and while I could
Mm.
continue, I'm good at it, I could be relatively successful, maybe this doesn't align with my purpose. And I
Yes.
think that it takes a lot of courage and boldness, to say, okay, this is great, but this isn't my purpose. I'm going to follow that instead.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, when I went to America, I actually saw that led me on this path. I actually saw a psychic before I went on this dream trip to, because I thought I was going to find my purpose in LA and that was going to be it. And I got presented an opportunity to do celebrity events, which would have been my absolute dream. But what I got told before I went was that you'll discover that everything that glitters isn't gold. And that I think it really just sums up what you shared. It's like sometimes we have these paths that are very glittery, but they don't actually give us that sense of gold and fulfillment within. And so
Absolutely.
it is courageous, I think, to let go of some of the very shiny career paths or the lucrative career paths in exchange sometimes for the ones that at first we worry, are we actually going to be able to make the same income impact on this path? But it really is, so rewarding.
And it really is. I love that you said that, because I think one of the things I'm in the season of in my life right now, and in this path, is really, for a lot of us, it's like, oh, well, how deeply can I niche, and all of those things, and we can get a little bit stuck there. And I'm at a point where I'm like, how many women can I help?
Yes.
How many lives can I impact? Right?
Mhm.
That's the game that I'm playing, right? Because we can't change the world playing small,
Mm.
right? And so it requires that same courage, that same boldness, I think, that helped us navigate away from sort of the shiny thing, to follow our purpose, to follow our path, but then to also say, okay, um, I feel divinely chosen, divinely selected for this. And so I'm not going to play small with this gift. I'm not going to play small with this passion.
Mm.
And that impact and that influence then helps us reach as many people as we possibly can when we're using that platform properly. And I
Mm.
think it's okay then to have income that comes with that, right? Because
Yeah. I think
that's a reward.
totally. And I think there's that saying that's like choose your hard. I think when we're following a path that might seem shiny or maybe we're good at it, but we're not really fulfilled by it, that can be hard. But following your purpose can also be hard, but there's a much more enriched
Oh yeah.
rewardness that comes with that path. So it's like, do you want the hard that leads to things not being as fulfilling in life? Or do you want the hard that's fulfilling in life?
Exactly, right? Because I think that also then starts to lend into, like, what do you want your legacy to be,
Yes, I'm really
right?
big on that too.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. And
Especially the
so
6-line profile. I feel like that's like, I'm like waiting for that 50. I'm like, come on. I'm like, the clarity, let it arrive. Uh,
and it does come, it does. And you get a little bit more crystal. And, that's another thing. I was having a conversation with another woman. I was speaking at a mastermind recently, even when we look at like aging and
mm,
that topic for women, right? And how there's certain limitations that seem um, almost automatic,
mm,
you know? Oh, what you wear, you're too old for that. Um, you can't dream like that. You
mm,
can't live like that. You can't. And it's like, who made up these rules? Who put somebody in charge that's sitting somewhere making up
mm.
these decisions
Yeah.
that mean literally nothing?
Yeah. And, I think I always tell my mom that as well because she's, in her 60s now. And
Yeah.
I'm always saying to her, like, it's not too late. You can still do whatever you
No.
want. And I always look to people like Jane Fonda and I loved Betty White. I'm like, yes, I want to be fabulous at 99 in a pantsuit, like still working. Like, that's my dream. I'm like, I don't want
Yes.
to retire. Like, I just want to still be slaying on stage in a matching pantsuit
That's
when I'm about to hit 100. Like, that's my dream. So I feel like, but that's, I think when you find that thing that lights you up, that does become the dream because it's like it never
yes.
ends. It's not something you retire
Yes.
from. You don't retire from your purpose. But in saying
No.
that, that leads perfectly into our topic of radical self-care because in order to get to my fabulous pantsuit at 100, still executing my purpose, we have to be healthy. And that was my lesson this year, or one of my lessons. There was many, but one of my lessons this year was realizing how much I'd really prioritized my business and my creativity and the creations that were in my business ahead of my health.
Mhm.
And I was really trying to pour from fumes and on empty
Mm.
creative. And there were so many things that I had to then course correct this year, gut health, mental health, physical health. Like I was saying, my physio appointments getting to the point where I was like, hips were like out of alignment. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get to that eventually. So it was just this place where I was just so emotionally, spiritually, energetically bankrupt. And I really
Mhm.
needed to flip the script and realize I needed to put myself first. Otherwise, my business was going nowhere. And I had this part of the year where I had to actually just take some time off. And I
Mhm.
thought, wow, like if I hadn't have stopped and caught this now, if I had really had a problem that was more serious than what I was dealing with now in terms of my health, you know, I wouldn't have had the ability to potentially rest as long as I needed to. And it was this realization that, if I want my business to keep going, I, the person that's executing it, need to be 100% well to do that.
Yes, that's 100% right. And it's the entire philosophy, the entire mission statement, actually, of Rebel Soul. That's the name of my business. And it's funny because the name Rebel came out of my childhood. I was
Mm,
always that rambunctious kid that questioned everything. Like, but
yeah.
why? But why? Right? And I thought that it was like super annoying as a
Yeah.
kid, but right. Um, but as an adult, as a female in this world, as a woman that identifies as female, it's the thing that we need, because if we
Mm,
don't have the ability to question, like I was talking about, sort of like these rules and laws that are so, like, where did that even come from, right?
and
Um, right, patriarchy, right?
yeah.
And so, and so thinking about like your story, so much of that too is tied to, we can say that it's like our hustle and grind culture, and sure, um, we do have to hustle and grind. I don't want to make any sort of comment that makes anybody think that any of the things that we do get handed to us. That's not
Mm,
true.
mm,
What I'm talking about is a life of balance,
mm,
right? So when you know, for example, you're going to have a busy season, taking the time up front, the same way you begin to plan out your meetings, the same way you begin to plan out, right, your podcast episodes, the way you plan your content, right? Because we are a content hungry
yeah.
society, right? When you sit down to do that, simultaneously, let's sit down and talk about what the self care during a season like that needs to look like. Because
Mhm.
the season when we're not doing a lot isn't the same level of self care that we need when we're in a season of much,
Yes.
right? And so, for example, maybe that means we're going to take a couple of weeks where we say, okay, this is my planning season.
Mm,
And during my planning season, I'm going to work it so that most of my days are spent, in some planning or whatever, balanced out with meditation, 5 minutes. Let's be clear.
mm.
I'm talking about micro dosing. I'm not
Yes.
talking about,
I love that
you know,
microdosing
two and a
yourself.
half, right? Like 2.5 hours is
Yeah.
fantastic, but that's not realistic for my life either,
Mm,
right? So I'm not coming from a place of asking people to do the things that I wouldn't do. I am anti guru, right? I don't
mm,
believe in people sitting around pontificating about what other people should do if they can't do it for themselves. Remember
mm,
that thing I mentioned, like you can only lead others as far as you've led yourself.
mm,
But can you sit and breathe for 8 counts in silence? 100%.
mm,
It does so much to regulate your nervous system if you can do that before you hop on a call.
mm,
Centering your thoughts, calming your nervous system. Your conversation will flow completely differently because you will be coming from a place of thriving versus just surviving,
mm,
right? Um, Calming that fight or flight in ourselves that that's become almost like second nature. It's almost like, the state that we live in constantly. Spending 5 minutes in meditation,
Mm.
stretching your body for 10 minutes. I believe in compound workouts. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there. Look at that. You got a 30-minute workout in the course of a day and you didn't have to spend it all in one place.
Mm.
Right? So there's strategies, but it requires someone who understands how to explain and implement these things and also how to help move the mental mindset, how to shift the mindset, because that's the
Mm.
first thing that has to change, right? And I posted in my community today, if the sound of radical self-care, this idea of prioritizing yourself, your well-being before all things feels controversial,
Mm.
reflect on the instructions that you're given when you're on the plane
Mm.
and nobody questions it. Yep, I'll put the mask on myself first, no problem. Because you understand in that moment the concept that you cannot do for anything, do for others, what you haven't done for you.
Mm.
But somehow in our everyday lives, we will do for we will miss meals, not hydrate,
Mhm.
um, not take a nap if you need it, not
Yeah.
get any sunlight. I'm talking basics here. I'm not even talking about blocking out time for sort of in that triangle of needs, right?
Mm.
I'm talking about our very basic things.
Yeah.
When we're foregoing those things, how do we expect to really perform optimally?
Mhm.
And then to your point, really own and live in our purpose to leave to impact others.
Yeah. Especially, I think, in, say, for example, our line of work where our work is to support other people, if
Yes.
we are not resourced and, in that self-provision, then we've got nothing to give or less impact to give than if we are well resourced and well taken care of. And like
100%.
you said, it is these little micro moments. Even something I've been trying to do for myself is just take my lunch outside, just sit without any
Mm,
stimulation and just eat that in the sunshine 5-10 minutes. That is even enough during the day to just give you that moment of sustenance. Or prioritizing in the morning, reading instead of being on my phone, or having a bath instead of a shower. Sometimes it's just these tiny little ways that we
yes.
can just indulge, I guess, the self. And at the moment, because I have been doing a lot of nervous system regulation work, for me, instead of the meditation, I've just been switching it up to 10 minutes of somatic work. And that has been
Yes.
such a game changer for me, because I was in this state where I couldn't really sit still and be quiet and meditate. So I was like, okay, I'm going to move my body. I'm going to, be in the shaking and the breath work and all of those things
Hmm.
to actually
Hmm.
really support myself in being able to head into my day feeling so much more balanced, especially, and I notice it so much now, is if I have a morning where I just jump on my phone, even for like 15-20 minutes first thing, it just completely derails my morning, because then my mind is just spiraling off on everything I've just seen. And then I start getting that little dopamine hook in where I'm like, oh, better check my messages again. Did that person reply? And then it's just takes over your whole day. So even
Yes.
just having that intentionality of, 30 minutes for yourself, even just spaced out throughout the day, but if you can do it, first thing, whatever it is for you, however you can find it to make it work. But I also think as well, sometimes I think when we think of self-care, like you said, it's this idea that we have to do it consistently and it's somewhat the same. But I think it's like recognizing that there's so many different ways to do it in different seasons. As a manifester with my surges and rests, when I'm in my rest period, like taking care of myself is easy because I've pulled back.
Yes.
I'm at the sauna, I'm in the bath, I'm reading, like I'm hermiting, I'm good. I'm eating well. I've got space to cook. I'm walking the dog. I'm sitting out in the park. I'm just looking at the sky. So there's a whole different
Yeah.
energy about me then. But if I go into a surge, I have to meal plan. I have to make sure I've got things in the fridge, because otherwise I will just skip it all. And then I don't have not enough fuel to get me through the end of the surge. So I've got
That's
to be
it.
really cautious, because I also notice when I've got so much energy in my body as a surge as well, that's when I'm typically like, I've got so much energy. Should I be on my phone? I should just go on my phone and scroll TikTok. Like I just like have too much energy and I'm just trying to balance it with these kind of unhealthy things. So I think that's also recognizing, how your energy works and how you can actually support and sustain yourself in different seasons of life as well.
I totally agree. And I love how you bring it back to our human design. I'm a manifesting generator, so you can only
Mm,
imagine I live on a surge, right? For the
yeah.
for the most part,
Well, I
it's
feel
like
like Manny gens are like you mix up the energy between a marathon runner and a sprinter. It's like but there's always momentum, but there's slight shifts in the momentum field.
yes, it's literally like it's the. I'll tell you this until I understood my human design. I actually thought like I was like flaky or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't think it, but I was just like, oh my God, like my way of being is so highly energetic. It's so visionary. It's so just like go, go, go. And then understanding my human design helped me understand, like, oh, okay, that's okay. You're supposed to be like that. But here's how you can better manage that. Here's how you can better communicate the way you move to other people because
Mm,
I started to understand how I could make people feel a little like left behind with my planning or whatever. And I'm like,
same.
everybody should just keep up, right? But
Yeah.
no, it's not
And also
realistic
just understand when I drop off the face of the earth for a few months.
because I hermit too, right?
Yeah.
I think, but even in my hermiting, I'm still, like you said, like the marathon, right?
Mm,
I'm still going, I'm still
yeah.
producing. I'm just not sprinting at the time.
Mm,
But that's been extremely helpful to me too, in just understanding also my self-care needs. So to
mm,
your point, it required that knowledge and also giving myself some grace. So we can get a little bit judgy with ourselves too, right? Like you were talking about those seasons. So imagine you not having that understanding of yourself, and then you're in your surge season. And rather than operating from a place of grace and awareness and saying, I'm in my search season, so I know I need meal planning. I need these things to be in place to honor my self care because it's very different than my sort of hermiting season where I've got
mm,
time and all of that. And I think we can get lost in that all or nothing, especially with social media and things like that, where, it's everybody's like putting out their highlight reel and it just seems like they're always working out and everything's working fine and they're never
yeah.
taking a break and oh my God, look at her body and why isn't my and, and just for my clients, for all of us, for women, like
Mm,
stop doing that. Trust me, if you saw behind the scenes of what it takes to even create half the amount of content that people are putting out, trust me, they've got a cool area in their house that's probably really clean and some good lighting because the
yeah.
rest of it, up with all that, unless you have a film crew, I promise you, it's not
Mm,
easy. So be graceful with yourself and just know I'm in this season. This is what this season requires. Maybe it's not an hour a day. Maybe it's more like 20 minutes. Maybe it's more like 30 minutes. But that level of intentionality still means you are prioritizing your well being. Does it
mm,
mean that you're working less? Probably not, right? It just means I'm also taking the time to put the juice in my batteries so that I can power myself intentionally, fully, and appropriately.
mm,
Because without that, unfortunately, we run ourselves down.
yeah.
And then, like we were talking, oftentimes without those moments of intentionality and without that focus on self care, we lose connection to our innate knowing,
Mm,
that signaling that tells us something's not quite right.
yeah.
And then it requires a health crisis to take us down, right?
Mhm, yeah.
And then it's late. And now you've got months offline to
Mhm.
try to go back and recover when you could be recovering every day. We recharge
Yeah.
our phones every night.
Yeah. Yeah. We're prioritizing our iPhone battery over our own.
We're like, oh, I got to take my watch off. I got to take my phone. I put them on the, but
Yeah.
for us, no. We even have little battery packs that we carry around with us because we understand. that one charge sometimes a night isn't sufficient for our level, for
Mm,
the level of activity of the device.
mm,
Where's that same care and love and nourishment and nurturing for ourselves,
yeah. And
right?
one pattern that I catch myself in a lot as well is I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't really have time for that today. But then I'll check my screen time and then it's like, oh, well, I had time for TikTok or I had time for Instagram. And it's so easy when you think, oh, I don't know if I can really commit to a 30-minute workout this afternoon, but then I'll happily sit on the couch and watch that. Or you think, oh, I'll meditate this morning. And then you just spend a little bit too much online. And then you're like, oh, I've got my call. I can't anymore. And it's really just, I think, recognizing what we're choosing to prioritize and where we're choosing to spend that space. Because a lot of times we're choosing these activities that don't actually nourish ourselves because we're overwhelmed, because we're overstimulated. And it's a way of almost disassociating. And we're regulating
Hmm.
our nervous system through something that's actually stimulating our nervous system on a different level. And so when we're recognizing that we're leaning for the Netflix, the TikTok, the Instagram scroll, taking that little pocket of time and just spending it first doing something that is of a self-care, and then see if you still want to reach for that afterwards. But at least you've prioritized yourself first. I actually just recommitted to putting my phone in another room so that I
I love
am
it.
back on track with not reaching for that first thing, because I was using it as a meditation app as well. But then it was just right there. And then it was like, well, I'll just have a little looky afterwards. And then it's just there's goes half an hour, there goes 45 minutes, there goes an hour, and then I'm on my walk, and then I'm in my Instagram DMs and I'm sending voice notes, and it just spirals. So for me, I know that I can't look at it because I don't have that level of self-control until I've done the things that I need to do for myself.
100%. And two things I wanted to say about that. One, I was listening to a book by a gentleman. I won't say the name of the company, but it's one that everybody in the wellness profession would know. And he was saying that within the wellness business, this industry, our competition isn't other wellness modalities. It's the couch,
Mm,
it's social media, it's like binging TV shows. You know, he was like, your competition isn't even each other. It's not the on demand studio, it's not the brick and mortar studio down the street, it's none of those things. It's our audience is actually captivated by the things that you talked about that keep them overstimulated, distracted, disassociated, right? And almost by design.
mm,
Because the other flip to this is when you watch somebody else's highlight reel and you begin to compare yourself to that, it almost gives you sort of like an excuse to say, well, I'm never going to get that. So I might as well, right? And so, it's unfortunate that that happens, but it's happening far too often. Or it keeps
mm.
people from focusing on themselves and focusing on the latest hot, entertainment gossip or whatever the case may be, when in reality, the 15 minutes that you spent getting smarter about that topic, you could have spent, lifting a kettlebell or
Yeah.
taking a walk outside in the sunshine or, whatever. And it's similar. I love the example that you stated, because if you think about, for many many years in the nutrition industry, they say before you reach for the snack, drink a glass of water and see if you still crave that, because
Mm,
it's actually probably thirst and not hunger. And I feel like it's the same application, right? Go for the thing that your soul, that your body, that your mind needs first, and then see how you feel. It's
mm.
probably unlikely that you're going to want to reach for that same thing. And especially right now, the world is in a crazy, crazy place. And so, again, sort of reflecting on why self-care becomes, and this level of self-care, not self-maintenance, right? Not
Mm,
the nails and the hair and all those things. We're talking about mind, body, and soul. We're talking about our needs, our emotional, spiritual, um, physical, physiological needs, and meeting those and keeping us in a place that makes us feel safe with ourselves is so key, because so much of what's going on in the world feels so unsafe.
yeah.
And in order for us to even have, I think, smart and good opinions
Mm,
about things, or to be the shoulder that someone needs,
mm,
to the safe space that somebody needs, we have to first create that with ourselves.
mm. So what are some of the things that people can start to do to shift that mindset? Because like you said, it is so ingrained in us to prioritize everyone and everything first. How do we begin to make those real internal shifts to cultivate that sense of safety, personal responsibility, and awareness to actually maintain this shift to prioritizing ourselves first?
Yes, I love that question, because as humans, we have such a all or nothing, microwave mentality, 0 to 100 real quick kind of way of approaching things. And it will not work that way.
Mm,
The reason that I recommend the micro moments or the micro dosing of wellness is because it requires small steps done consistently, right? That you
mm,
build on over time. So expecting to wake up tomorrow with a new mindset is setting yourself up for failure. And
mm,
we do that far too often. We set these lofty goals, these aggressive goals, um, resolutions, whatever, that are almost impossible to reach, right?
mm,
I think the number is like 1 in 90, I don't know, 1 in like 95 people, something like that number actually follow through on a
mm,
goal they set. It was something I was reading the other day. And so the other thing is setting the goal as more of a feeling and an outcome.
mm, mm,
So visualizing what that looks like. I actually released a free journal to anybody who signs up on my email list that sort of walks them through the process of sort of like visualizing what the outcome could look like, whether that's a week from now, a month from now, and then breaking it down into these smaller daily steps that really help you get there. The other thing I encourage everyone to do is get in touch with what you need. We are
mm,
so in touch with the needs of others that it's very rare that we ask ourselves, what do I need right now? I ask myself that question at the beginning of every month, at the beginning of every week, and at the beginning of every day. What do I need right now? And sometimes if I feel like a stress surge, I will literally sit myself down and say, what do you need right now?
mm,
And it could just be, I need a cup of water. I need 5 minutes to think. I need, right, some binaural sound healing music, and I just need 5 minutes. And it could be as simple as that. Um, the other thing that I did in the journal, which I hope people like it, because I know that so many people are out of touch with those things, I
mm,
actually gave them a bunch of ideas. I
mm.
listed like
Like a
55 things.
menu. Yeah.
Yes, just pick and choose.
Mm,
Um, and then the other thing I ask is think about it from the perspective of what if you needed it and you needed it in the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day, because everything doesn't cost money. A lot of times it's free. Sometimes you can't drive to get it.
mm,
Sometimes you can't take a plane to get it. You need it right now. So a lot of things should be based around that, and make a list. Keep it in your
mm,
phone.
mm.
You know,
Yeah.
what are the things that make you feel nourished and whole and complete and soothed and satiated? Is
Mm,
it um, fresh French fries? Is it a glass of cold water with limes? Is it a
mm,
strawberry smoothie? Is it 5 minutes in the sunshine? Is it,
mm.
because it can be this wild mix of things. And like you mentioned, a menu where you can say, okay, I've got 20 minutes. I want 4 things off my list.
Yeah.
Imagine just being able to do that for yourself, and
Mm,
how grounding and how um, nourished and how safe you feel. And then the second part of that becomes, and this is a little of the psychological component, you've now built a trust with yourself
mm,
about how well you care for you. I feel so safe with me because I can meet my need.
Mm,
And that is such a beautiful feeling because so much of the stuff we think we need is like external to who can give this to me? Where can I get this from? What about giving it to yourself?
yeah, I love that. So good. And I almost think like put it on your wall or something where you can see it.
Mm.
You need that visceral reminder where you just go into, into your office and you're like, okay, what do I need off my list right now? And I also think there's a few little key components with human design actually that I was thinking about as you were speaking
Oh, I love this.
to reflect on, especially, they said that a vast number of people don't reach their goal or commit to the goal that they make. And in human design, if we have an undefined heart center, so when you pull up your chart, if your heart center
Mm.
is white and open, that means that we don't have a consistent access to willpower. And so, what that means for us is when we set commitments to ourselves that are too extreme, that we're not going to have the will for, we often then default on those commitments. And so I love
Mhm.
what you were talking about, where it's more about the feeling and the outcome and having this menu of really simple things, because it's
Mhm.
not then, I'm going to go to the gym every day for 30 minutes. I'm going to meditate every day for 15 minutes. For many of us, myself included, as someone with an undefined heart, I cannot make those sort of commitments. I will let myself down inevitably. And then we feed back into the not self of that center, which is
Yes.
feeling unworthy and undervalued. We then feel, why can't I do it? Other people can do it. Why couldn't I hold that commitment? Should I push myself harder? And then
This
we
is so
feed into
good.
this not self behavior. So I think having that reference point, if you have a defined heart, you might be able to, if you've got the will for it, you might be able to have a run of that commitment for a while. You might switch it up, but you might be able to hold something like that a little more than someone like myself. There's also another few things that I think to look at is whether you have gate 5 or 15 activated. Gate 5 is fixed patterns. That's a
Mm.
desire for certain rituals in the day. I have gate 5. And so
I
gate
have
5,
to write these down.
yeah. Gate 5, we love a bit of ritual and routine, but what that looks like is we then know when that time of ritual has come to completion. It's time to mix it up. And I see that all the time. Right now, I'm obsessed with acai bowls. I know that I will have them every day until I burn that into the ground, and then I will change my mind, and then I'll be having something else. I was going for walks religiously every single morning. Now I'm doing somatic embodiment practices instead, but I still have that time for myself as my ritual. But what I'm doing to meet that need of self care is changing in these sort of seasonal patterns. Whereas someone with
Mm.
gate 15, the gate of extremes, that may lend them to wake up every single day and want to do something different. Or maybe a few days of this and a few days of that. And that could also be Manny-gens as well. that
I was
energy is
like,
a little bit that energy is a little bit similar. Gate 15 and the Manny-gens a little bit more, generators, they might have that consistent energy for something to apply it for a little bit longer. So it's really understanding a few things like that. But in terms of that sense of safety as well, and when we're meeting our needs, there's also 4 other energy centers I would look at. One is our emotional center. If you have that undefined, you're an emotional receptor. So you're highly in tune with the emotions around you. So having practices to connect to what do I need is
mhm,
also supportive of that, because sometimes you can recognize, wow, I'm actually holding a lot of stuff that's not mine right now. So what I need is to
yes,
be able to discern what is actually my need right now and what am I picking up in the environment around me. And then if we have it
this is so
defined,
good.
sometimes we need to just purge those emotions out. We need to scream into a pillow. We might need to shake it out. I have a defined emotional center. So sometimes we need to emit emotions because we've got it percolating up inside of us. And then
Yeah.
also our root center, our stress center. Sometimes we're taking in stress if we've got it open, or sometimes we're feeling the pressure of that defined center. So those stress management practices, when we're noticing that
Mhm,
pressure, is also helpful. Our spleen, how you were talking about that sense of safety, our
mhm,
spleen is connected to our sense of safety. So if we have that undefined, that sense of inner resourcefulness and coming back to that and cultivating that trust in that inner safety is huge. And if we have it
mhm.
defined, we're then also looking at how we can continue to trust that and not ignore it. I have it
Yeah.
defined, ignoring it all year. Whoopsie daisy. So listening to the defined spleen. And then also our head center, which is our mental pressure. And so
Yeah.
this is where we have it undefined or open, like myself. We can have that thinking about things that don't matter. And that's when we go into overthinking. And that's when we start to have those distracted behaviors. Whereas
Mm.
if we have it defined, there's also a propensity to have so many ideas and so many things going on that we sometimes need to get that down on paper and get it out of the head so we can start to prioritize through our authority. What do we actually need to do on this list? So I think those four centers in particular are really key to what you're talking about, in sense of how sometimes that creates behaviors as well. Like I was talking about, that desire to overcommit, the desire
Mm.
to avoid our emotions, the need to sometimes, even like with that spleen, it's like hang on to things that aren't good for us, which are those habitual
Mm.
behaviors. So there's so many in those centers that I think if we understand how they work, particularly, that's going to support us to understand how to follow what you're talking about in a way that's going to be unique to our design as well.
Which I think is so important because, and thank you for that. I took notes because I got to go back and look at my chart. I'm like, I feel like I know, but I'm going to look at my chart to make sure. Um, those are having that information is what is going to support us um, being able to create like sustainable practices, right? And
Mm,
ultimately, that's what we want, and we want to be able to do it in a way that's graceful to us. Because the other thing that I am really against is turning self care into another thing that we have to do, another measuring stick that we're, oh, did I do it? Did I not do it? Does that make me a good or a bad person? Like, no, 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 no. It's a judge
mm,
free zone, right? But I think the more that we can do it, the more that we can implement it sort of seamlessly into our lives and seamlessly into our days. Um, we do build the trust not only in ourselves, but it's also that little bit of confidence, right? As I was growing up, I remember my mom used to always say that accomplishment breeds confidence,
mm,
and I do believe that to a certain degree. And in this case, I mean, even if we're able to do that one thing per day, right? So like you were saying, don't do the whole like I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every day. No, how about I'm going to find 5 minutes a day, right, to breathe, do some gratitude journaling. I'm a
mm,
huge fan of that. Focus more on what you have than what you don't, right? Be so grateful for what's here. Um, commit to that
mm.
and see if you can do that for a period of time that feels good and watch the transformation just happen, right? And then watch how you have the confidence to add in another thing because you didn't set yourself up for a failure, right? You set yourself up for success by committing
Mm,
to something that you could do and did. And that just feels amazing,
yeah.
you
And I
know?
think that's our tendency, though, to overcomplicate it and make it bigger than it
Hmm.
needs to be. And that's just not even in self care. It's in so many different things. It's in business, it's in our productivity, it's our to do list.
Yes.
We always overestimate the time we need and what we need to do. And I think that if we can just scale it back to give ourselves those little wins, it really does create better behaviors. Because, even this year coming back into my own physical health, for a while it was like I could just do 20-minute workouts, and that was
Yeah.
as much as I could do, or 15, or even sometimes a 10-minute yoga session. But it was just that commitment to myself of just whatever time I had or whatever I could do with where I was at, I was going to choose that.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's okay to begin. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay if the workout is 5 minutes or 10 minutes. All of those things are okay.
Mm,
Nobody says that that the measure of success is the hour-long workout at the gym. Again, like who's making up these rules? Who's making it up? Make up your own rules, right? Do what's right for you because I'm also not a fan of sort of broad scoping and saying these kinds of workouts are good for everybody because, again, I watched way too many people in who have metabolic dysfunction, who have hormones out of balance, who have thyroid and adrenal imbalance, working themselves into an inflamed body and not and completely unable to understand why nothing is working. Right? It's an example of everything is not for everybody, and sometimes too much is actually not good.
Yeah. And I used to be a really avid F45, which is this really intense
Oh,
fitness
I know.
company out here. Yeah. And that I was doing that 6 days a week, rain, hail, or shine, whether I had my period or not, whether I felt under the weather or not. That was my thing that I just really got into. And I think it's interesting when you start to do the deconditioning work around your design. My
Mhm.
body just does not have the energy and desire to do workouts like that anymore. I'm also a lot
Nope.
older than when I was doing those as well, but but, now I think as a manifestor, I'm realizing that walks, yoga, sometimes short, higher intensity things are good when I've got
Yeah.
the energy for it, but I don't always have the energy for it. So I really now honor, what my body actually needs. And I know whether I need a yoga session or a Pilates session or a walk or something a little bit more intense to get a little bit of that energy out of my body.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really important to kind of understand what our body actually needs and wants and offer that as well. And to be kind in those seasons where we don't have the energy for it as well. Because I think that,
Yes.
like I said, I used to even work out when I was on my period, really intense. And
Mhm.
now that's just a no. I'm just like, nope, free pass, don't need to do anything. Just gonna rest, watch Gossip Girl. That's what I'm rewatching at the moment.
Oh my god, I love that show.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorites. But yes, giving yourself that permission slip,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And again, that's that empowerment piece to make your rules, do what's right for you. Listen to your body. It knows. It
Mm,
really does know. It always has known. And then the other piece of it, we're born worthy.
mm,
We don't have anything to prove. It's already proven.
mm,
So if you woke up with that every day, what would life look like?
yeah.
Barring all comparisons to the girls on Instagram who get paid to have those bodies and spend all day and get financed by whomever to do it. No shade. Like, I
Yeah.
knock nobody's hustle. But in my real life world, that's not my reality.
Mm,
And so creating a world where I even would be exposed to that as some sort of point of comparison is just brutal, right?
mm,
So no,
yeah.
absolutely not. Absolutely
Mm,
not. And so knowing that I'm already worthy, I'm already good. Everything else that I add to this world is really in service of my purpose and building my legacy.
mm,
On the side, in addition to that, is being an example of the things that I talk about.
mm,
Because I would never ask anyone to do something I wouldn't do, and I would never try to lead others to a place I've never been.
yeah. And I think that just to round it all out, I think really just having that intentionality of health
Hmm.
is the best motivator because like we said, our health really is the foundation for our success. It's the foundation for our career, our business, our relationships, everything.
Yes.
And, like I said to you before we jumped on, my dad had a stroke in 2000
Mm.
and they were running two businesses at the time and they had to let go of those businesses because of his health. And, that was such a wake up call for me as well, because a lot of
Mm.
how he had lived his life was I will enjoy life when I have
Yeah,
my
no.
success.
Yes.
And his health did not allow him to keep his success,
Mm.
nor live the life that he was putting off
Yeah.
until he had this, success. So when you don't have the health, you're not going to have the success, but delaying your enjoyment of things or delaying your satisfaction in life for that and prioritizing the hustle over your
Yes.
health means you may not have either. And that was the
Mm.
biggest lesson that I learned from his life was to not wait until you have the success, to live your life, but also not wait till you
Mhm.
have the thing to take care of yourself as well.
Oh, that is, I'm so sorry for your loss and that experience, but it really is, that's it.
Mm,
That's 100% it. We have to be able to prioritize our well-being over everything else because quite frankly, nothing else matters without it.
mm,
Not our like being here for our family, being here for our love relationships, being here for our communities, being here to serve in our purpose and our passions, but we require wellness to do it.
mhm,
Otherwise, like you were saying, I think maybe it was before we got on, right? You're just pouring from an empty vessel,
mm,
and that serves no one.
mm. Yeah, beautiful. What is the biggest shift that you've seen from really embracing this tagline of your business of radical self-care? What have you seen as the biggest shift for you from making that a lifestyle?
I am unapologetic about my rest.
Mhm.
I will make a call about something that could, in my former self, I would have stayed committed. Well, I would do it anyway because,
Mm,
um, you know, but now, no.
mm,
I ask myself, what do I need? Because when I know what I need, that's how I'm going to operate as my best self.
mm.
So if I want to show up as my best self, the certain things have to be in place.
Yeah.
And so I will quickly hermit at home. I'm quick to cancel a plan. I'm
Yes.
quick to say, absolutely not. I'm not
Yeah.
coming out. No, it's past,
Yeah.
any number of those things. But that's probably been the biggest shift. So if I sum
Yeah.
that up, it's probably embracing the word no and establishing
Yes.
really strong boundaries
Mm.
and priorities around what really matters to me.
Yes. My second line manifesto was just like, yes, 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 the whole time. I'm like, me too.
Right. It's like, oh my
And
God, count me in. And now I'm like,
yeah.
count me out.
Yeah, my thing nowadays is pretty much like count me out unless I decide on the date that I'm in.
Right.
Unlikely to go anywhere, but I will let you know if I change my
Right.
mind. So, final question, what does being fully expressed mean to you?
Oh, I love that. Being in the spaces, places, people, and energies where I can show up as my full and complete self, authentic, unapologetic, full of love, and full of purpose, with no
Mm,
compromises.
yes. Oh my gosh, I love that answer. I love that idea as well of really allowing ourselves to be in the spaces that let ourselves be fully expressed. Huge.
Hmm.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I so appreciate your time and being here with us. And I will leave all of your details in the show notes for people to find you and to get also that beautiful journal that you were talking about as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for this. This was an absolute honor. And guys, get up on your human design. Like, do the thing, listen to all the shows, get all the good information, do it, do
Yeah.
it, do it. This lady is an absolute gem. She's
Oh,
amazing. So
thank you.